In this module, we'll talk about issues involved in codification, which are based on the selection of a particular variety for standardization and also the conflict between local and international needs of the users of these indigenized varieties of English. A very important issue that the codifiers of these varieties face is that of selection. For example, what to include in the standard variety of the English and what to overlook. For example, there are uses of English which are very unique to these regions and for which there is no comparable element available in the native varieties. So selection of such items is a very challenging job. The process of codification in the outer circle and the inner circle is very different. For example, in the inner circle countries, the codifier's job is not as challenging as that of the codifiers in the outer circle. In the native English-speaking countries, the codifiers have to select from one language, whereas in case of the outer circle Englishes, the codifiers have to function or have to take decisions in a multilingual context. So what they need to do is to develop a set of criteria for selection of standardized versions of indigenized varieties of English. So they cannot really pick and choose whimsically or based on the judgment of an individual or some individuals. They should develop a criteria against which they should evaluate the degree of formality or the degree to which those indigenized varieties meet international standards. So the focus should be on local educated varieties rather than looking towards the native English models or the varieties used by inner circle countries or by native English speaking countries or native English speakers. They have to now focus on local educated varieties. However, it is also more easily said than done because the existence of several educated varieties in these regions is likely to create several controversies. The varieties, the sub-varieties that we see in different regions where English is used as a second language, they are based on several ethnic and cultural features. So because of the varieties being based on different ethnicities and cultures, there is a great likelihood of preference to one particular variety which is closer to a particular ethnic group will cause a lot of controversies. Then another problem in selection is the continued preference shown by the users of these indigenized varieties or the people who are found in the countries where these indigenized varieties are used. They show a preference, they still show a preference for the native English speaker norms. However, what we need to do is to raise awareness among people that the native speaker interlocutor is completely irrelevant for these users of indigenized varieties, because in many cases the users of English in the outer circle countries use English only with other second language users of English, and sometimes they do not get a chance ever in their entire life to come face to face with a native English speaker. So they learn and use English for their entire life with other second language users of English. In this way, the native speaker interlocutor, or the assumption that they will use English with native speakers becomes completely irrelevant, and we need to raise this awareness among the users of English, the other learners of English, and also among policymakers, teachers, parents of children who want their children to learn English, etc. Then another problem is the conflict that exists between local needs and the international needs. The local needs are international requirement for intelligibility and acceptability. So if these varieties are developed, codified, and only those elements are included in their codification which address the local needs, a time may come when these varieties will become completely unintelligible to the international audience. So we need to strike a balance between the local needs and the need for the intelligibility and acceptability of these varieties for international communication. So keeping in mind the functions that these varieties perform locally, we need to make certain amendments in when it comes to codification, or certain amendments in these varieties to make them internationally usable. So what can be done is combine the local features of these varieties with some international features. So there's a dire need for the acceptance of local innovations. When these varieties are used internationally, they are considered less intelligible by the native speakers of Englishes because of this lack of acceptance of the innovations that these non-native English speakers make in their use of English. So what is needed is the standardization of the English lexicon of non-English words. So there are several words for which we do not have equivalents in the English language. There are several words in the local culture, local languages, which do not have equivalents in the English language or English culture. For such non-English words, we need to develop lexicon and make it standardized. Then another thing that should be done is the inclusion of code mixing and code switching in grammar books and dictionaries. Because code mixing is one thing which is used widely by the English language users and speakers in the outer circle countries, especially in urban settings. So this code mixing should also be made a part of grammar books and dictionaries. Some attempts have already been made at codifying indigenized varieties of English. For example, we have a Macquarie Regional Asian Dictionary, which was co-published with Grolier International Dictionary, World English in an Asian Context. These books, or this particular dictionary, documents the English of South Asia and Southeast Asia. This particular dictionary, or this attempt at codification, aims to meet the needs of the English speakers in the region, and because these needs are different from the needs of the people who learn English with the assumption that it will only be used with the native English speakers. So this dictionary also includes items of international currency along with local words which have never appeared in a dictionary before. So it does not include words only of these indigenized varieties. It does include words, latest words, up-to-date words from native English, the standardized native English, as well as words which are very local, which are a result of the acculturation of English in Asian and South Asian contexts, and which have never appeared in a dictionary before. So what we need to do is to recognize the inter and intra-national needs of the indigenized varieties of English users. They need to use English within their community, so they have these intra-national needs, the needs for using English within their own country, within their own community. But of course, many of them have the need to use English internationally for several reasons, for academic reasons, for business reasons, for diplomacy reasons. So we need to codify these Englishes, keeping in mind both these inter and intranational needs of the users of these new varieties of English.